I think that using artists in advocacy can be a really great way of bringing issues to the surface and making things visible. Visual artists and designers who create logos, who create adverts, who create all the visual stimuli you see in the world. So if you can bring an artist to an issue such as family violence or homelessness, what you can do is visualize an issue that perhaps people aren't seeing.
This is the Artist Diary podcast, brought to you by the City of Whittlesea. You're listening to Teagan Crouch share her insights on creative aid.
Hi, I'm Teagan Crouch. I'm a visual artist, and I also have a background in working with women who've experienced family violence and homelessness. My current project is called Creative Aid, which is a workshop intended for families who were doing it a bit tough during the pandemic. Creative Aid is a project intended for women and children who have previously experienced family violence and are currently in isolation due to COVID-19. So I'll be delivering interactive workbooks along with some corresponding art supplies to families who could benefit from some therapeutic exercises that encourage creative thinking. I have been referred some clients from local family violence agencies who would like to receive a creative aid package. And the creative aid packages include a creative workbook with interactive exercises. I also provide them with corresponding art supplies like pencils and paints and brushes. In the workbook, you will receive a message from me, and you'll also receive a little introduction into what creative aid is. I've curated multiple therapeutic exercises that are aimed to be approachable, joyful, and entertaining. The exercises include mandala making, portraiture exercises, face and body painting, along with things such as colouring in templates. They're all exercises that will just take you out of what might be a stressful mood, and hopefully they'll spark some, creative thinking in the participants and bring some joy. I've volunteered with the City of Whittlesea Council before, working with them in some of their recent art exhibitions and festivals. And I was notified about the City of Whittlesea's Creative Communities grant. So this project was designed specifically for this grant, and I thought it was the perfect opportunity for me to mesh together my passion for visual arts with my passion for social justice. And this quick grant came at the time of a pandemic, which kind of sits right in the middle of all of this, where everyone needs a creative outlet, they need something to do, but also things such as family violence are becoming more prevalent during these times. These exercises have all been inspired by little art projects that I've found in my journals. They're all based on things that I've done when I've just wanted to pass the time on holiday, or perhaps I've been making art because I was feeling stressed myself. I've often turned to creative exercises to stabilize my mood. So this was my way of giving that, tool for managing your emotions in a creative way and putting it into a workbook. So there's journaling exercises and things like that. But one of my favorites is an exercise called making mandalas. So making mandalas can reveal a representation of your unconscious self. They're recognized for their deep spiritual meaning and representation of wholeness. In this exercise, I ask my participants to try and design their own unique mandala. The only rule they really need to follow is to maintain some semblance of a circular design, but I encourage them to let their feelings inspire the mandala design. So using colours that reflect their mood, or perhaps some patterns that reflect something meaningful to them. For example, 5 concentric rings for 5 immediate members of your family could be shown in the mandala. And yeah, some say that your mandala can be seen as an expression of who you were at the time of its creation. So you could create a mandala and then note down a title for it and the date and look back at it and go, well, how was I feeling when I was making that work? I am in charge of all of the project's logistics, including making the Creative Aid workbook. So I've designed all of the exercises myself, and I've also drawn up examples for every exercise and then created a workbook in Adobe InDesign. I then send the workbook off to printers in Sydney, which I just did. So the workbooks are being printed as we speak. And while the workbooks are being printed, I've just finished collating all of the art supplies that go along with the workbooks. So I've got, more than $1,000 worth of paints and pencils underneath my bed. And I also am in charge of contacting the Creative Aid recipients through local family violence services such as Haven Home Safe, Orange Door and Wishin. And then I will be packing everything up and mailing out the Creative Aid packages to all of the families. There's going to be about 30 families who will receive a package through this grant, and hopefully I will start to interact with some of the recipients of the packages by creating work from images that they send me. So there's quite a lot that has gone into this project, but it's been very enjoyable. It's also been interesting to do a comprehensive risk assessment, ensuring all of the participants remain anonymous because anonymity is imperative for women who have fled a violent ex-perpetrator. There is one exercise in the workbook called Interacting with the Artist. In this exercise, I ask the participant to send me a photo of their favourite object or their favourite animal or maybe their favourite person from their home. And then with those photos that I receive from these families, I will print them out, I will paint onto them, and then I will post those paintings onto a public Instagram account. And those paintings could also be exhibited at one of Whittlesea's gallery spaces. So this is a way for the participants to interact with me, help me by giving me material to create new work and inspire new work, but also in a safe manner that they still remain anonymous and it's safe for the household. I chose this project because it was a direct response to what I was seeing in the workplace. I noticed that there was women who were experiencing a heightened level of anxiety during this pandemic. They're stuck at home with their children. They're not surrounded by their usual supports, and they have more heightened levels of anxiety than they normally already live with. And I think that it was important for me to reach out to these members of our community who are doing it quite tough. And this project is my way, this is my creative expression. These exercises are things that I do myself to calm myself down and to enjoy making art myself. So this is basically quite a personal handout, you could say, yeah. I sort of fell into working in homelessness and family violence. I work as the Rapid Housing Family Violence Assistant at Haven Home Safe for the Moving On program. The Moving On program It is a head lease program that subsidises rent for women who have previously experienced family violence. Through this work, I have really learned a lot about how underfunded family violence and homelessness is, and how the broader community doesn't pay enough attention to these catastrophic issues. And I really wanted to use my art as a way for advocating for these issues. I think during this pandemic, everyone's been in their own heads a lot more. You've had to sit with yourself a lot more, and sometimes that can be a good thing for self-exploration. But during times of stress, it's often not a good thing to be left with yourself, because you can become quite anxious, perhaps you could become quite depressed, and you've got to find some ways of coping and some tools for managing these thoughts and feelings. And I find that using art as therapy for times of stress can be really beneficial. Journaling, writing down how you feel, or writing a creative story. Or maybe you just need to take some time to draw the pot plant on your bench. And just by doing that, you are practicing mindfulness, and you're slowing down your breathing, and you are finding a way to slowly come out of your isolation slump. I think that art is great during ISO in terms of music and movies, and it keeps you, your brain turning. But it's also good to make stuff yourself and to work through what you might be going through at this time. I'm really excited to hear some feedback from some of the participants once they receive the workbook, and to see if these women pick it up and maybe they give this a go, like give painting a go, or have a go at making a mandala, or perhaps they can have a break and just throw the workbook at their children, and the kids can run off with the face paints that are included in the pack and have a blast with that. I'm just really excited to know what impact a simple package can have in a time where we're all isolated, and what a small gesture can do to make a difference in your day. This project's important to me because I think it's a turning point in how I'm going to be approaching all of my creative projects from now onwards. I think it's taken a pandemic for me to shift my thinking in what I want to do in the arts space. I previously did a lot of art about self-exploration, but I actually find it so much more enjoyable to create art for other people, or to create art that's inclusive, interactive, that can possibly bring communities of people together. I think that's a far greater challenge to take on, and I think that it's a really exciting space to move into, and I might be able to use this type of creative thinking to tackle, new issues in the future. Perhaps I do a more homelessness focused project in the near future. But yeah, this Creative Aid project is like the start of a new way of thinking for me. I hope that the participants from this project, maybe they'll just take away one exercise and they will practice that again in their lives. I think if they do that, then that's a win. If you learn how to draw portraiture and then in the future you find that you're drawing portraits all the time for joyful exercises, or maybe to calm you down, I've just then provided someone with a coping tool for daily life that's in a creative context. I feel like I don't want to put too much expectation on what my recipients take from this. I really want them to do what they will with this creative aid package. I think it would be great if they used it themselves, the women, but I also think it's great if they can lend it to a housemaid or to their children. I think that this package, whoever's hands it falls into, hope that they cherish it and enjoy using it. The great thing about this creative aid project is that it definitely can be replicated and adjusted for other causes and other projects. So we could replicate creative aid with some more funding just to fund printing more books and the art supplies and support more families throughout Victoria. But you can also change up the workbook so it's more suited for different groups. So perhaps in the future I could create a project that's designed specifically for homeless people who were staying in hotels during COVID-19. So I would adjust the workbook for a different audience. But yeah, same concept, providing people with a package that is a way of caring for those people and reaching out to those people who are feeling isolated. So this project has zero contact. It's designed as a delivery service because we do not want to be going into people's homes. It also has been designed for a group of people who have been affected by the pandemic. So everyone's affected by the pandemic, but some groups are doing it really tough. And I think that it's important to support women and children who have got trauma from family violence, to reach out to them to make sure they're okay, and to remind them that if they are feeling unsafe, that they can also contact services. So at the back of my Creative Aid workbook, I have Are You Feeling Safe page with all the local Victorian family violence services they can contact. I think that a lot of causes have added extra relevance during isolation, if that makes sense. I think that this pandemic has brought forth a lot of issues that we have been sweeping under the rug. We haven't been looking after our elderly. We haven't been investing into family violence. We don't know what's happening with homelessness. And all of a sudden during this pandemic, you can't ignore those things anymore. And I think that now is the time that people are starting to step up. The government is starting to invest more into these issues, and they need to continue investing. And I think that the arts community will follow, or I myself will follow. I think that it's important to support these communities of people who are not supported enough, and this pandemic has brought that to the surface. I think that the arts are undervalued and underrated. People don't understand the power that a creatively focused project can have on a community. I think the arts is one of the best ways to bring communities together. So I'd love to see more funding go into community arts projects and to artists. I also think that we need to put more money into family violence services. During this pandemic, we have seen a spike in family violence, but they say that it's also underreported because women are trapped in their houses with their perpetrators. So that spike is soon to rise. So yeah, I would like to advocate for respecting women, investing into family violence, and investing into the arts. I think that making the Creative Aid workbook has been so fun. I have enjoyed making this workbook so much because for every exercise that I wrote down, I had to do it myself to show an example and to test that it's an approachable exercise. And by going through all these different creative exercises in drawing portraits or going back to still life drawing, I've just been reminded of how much I love making art and how excited I am that someone else might enjoy this workbook as much as I have. I have steered away from making work a little bit during this year, focusing more on working, and it's really easy to lose touch of your creative side. And this workbook has just been so joyful and inspiring, and it brings out your creative side, and I really look forward to seeing how the participants interact with it. Women who have experienced family violence can have a heightened level of anxiety throughout their daily lives. During this pandemic, they could be experiencing even further stresses, such as job loss, having their kids at home, and being isolated from their families and their supports. Family violence workers in Victoria have reported that the number of first-time family violence reports have gone up by 42% during this pandemic. So if you or someone you know are afraid of a partner, a family member, or someone else, there are steps you can take to help keep you and your children safe by speaking to a trusted friend or family member, a medical professional, a family violence service, or by calling 1-800-RESPECT.
You have been listening to the Artist Diary podcast, presented by City of Whittlesea. For more episodes, as well as artist and project information, visit the Whittlesea Arts website.